The sand should have been the warning. Heat still hangs in the air, even though the sun is sliding lower, turning the dry forest into a place of long shadows and sharp edges. The ground is cracked in thin branching lines, as if the land has been trying to hold water in its hands and failing for weeks. Somewhere beyond the brittle trees, a riverbed runs empty. The wind moves through it anyway, whispering over stone that hasn't felt a current in months. A tiger stands at the border of that emptiness, not pacing, not stalking, just standing, body-angled forward, muscles held tight beneath dust-dulled stripes, as if the next step could decide something permanent. The cat is close enough to the riverbed that the air changes. It smells different here. Old dampness trapped in shaded pockets. Minerals. The faint metallic trace of something that once flowed and carried life with it. A few meters ahead, the ground drops into the channel. Down there, tucked beneath a collapsed bank, a shallow depression holds a thin film of water barely more than a dark shine in the dirt. It is not a pool. It is not safety. But it is water, and in this place that is the difference between endurance and collapse. The tiger knows it. Its nose lifts slightly, tasting the air. A slow inhale. A pause. Another inhale deeper, as if measuring what the wind is hiding. Its flank rises and falls with controlled breaths that do not match the strain already visible in the posture. The body looks intact, powerful, capable of violence in a single burst. But power is not what matters right now. In this landscape, the smallest losses accumulate until they become irreversible. The tiger takes one step forward. Pebbles shift under its paw and roll into the channel. The sound is tiny, but it lands in the silence like a signal. Somewhere far back in the trees, a bird gives a short call and stops. The tiger freezes, head turning slightly, ears angled toward the sound, listening not for prey, but for something else. Something that isn't there, something it might still be expecting. Another step, closer. The water is so near now that it reflects a sliver of sky. The tiger only needs to descend, press its muzzle down, and drink. Instinct demands it. The body demands it. Everything in the cat's frame is built to survive by obeying the simplest rule: when water is available, take it. But it doesn't move. Instead, the tiger lowers its head and stares into the riverbed, as if the empty channel is a memory it doesn't trust. Its tail hangs still. The shoulders remain lifted, tense, ready to recoil. The muscles along its spine tighten and release in a slow ripple, not the preparation for an attack, but the preparation for retreat. A gust of wind slides through the dry trees, bringing a new scent, faint, stale, and wrong. Not fresh blood, not prey, not another tiger close enough to challenge. Something older, something that doesn't belong to the present moment, but still clings to the land. The tiger's nostrils flare. Its jaw parts slightly, drawing scent deeper, reading the air the way it reads the ground. Then it takes a step back. The movement is deliberate, almost careful, as if the cat is backing away from a trap it cannot name. One more step, and the tiger is no longer on the edge of the riverbed. The water remains in the shadow below, untouched, waiting like a gift left unclaimed. The tiger turns its head once, just once, toward the thin, dark shine in the dirt. And then it walks away, leaving the only water it can reach behind it, as the forest closes silently around its retreating shape. Because whatever it sensed down there made the strongest predator in this landscape do the one thing it should never do. It chose thirst over certainty. The tiger is not difficult to recognize once you know what to look for. It is not the size many are large. Not the stripes, each pattern is unique, but uniqueness alone does not set this one apart. It is the way it moves when it believes no one is watching. A slight stiffness in the left hind leg after long distances. A habit of pausing before crossing open ground, even when there is no immediate threat. And a thin scar, pale against darker fur, running diagonally along the shoulder where skin once split under force and healed without rest. This tiger has survived long enough for these details to matter. It occupies a territory that does not forgive hesitation. The dry forest desert edge offers little cover and even less margin for error. Movement here is expensive. Every kilometer traveled without water compounds loss that cannot be quickly replaced. For a predator of this size, dehydration is not dramatic. It is quiet. It dulls reaction, shortens patience, and reshapes decision-making long before collapse becomes visible. And yet what defines this tiger is not what it lacks, but what it avoids. Again and again, it has been observed passing opportunities it should take. Shallow water, vulnerable prey, routes that promise short-term relief. Each time the decision appears measured rather than fearful. There is no panic in its posture, no frantic scanning for escape. Instead, there is calculation and restraint that seems to contradict everything its body is built to do. This pattern is not coincidence. The moment at the riverbed was not an exception. It was the clearest example of something that has been happening repeatedly in smaller, harder-to-notice ways. A deviation from expectation. A refusal to act when action would normally secure survival. The tiger does not behave as if it is confused. It behaves as if it is choosing, which raises a question that cannot be dismissed as instinct alone. Why would a predator, engineered by evolution to prioritize immediate survival, walk away from water when water is available? The answer is not obvious, and it is not comforting. Tigers are not known for hesitation. Their success depends on decisiveness, short bursts of speed, direct engagement, and minimal delay. In most environments, delay equals failure. But here delay has become routine. The scar on the shoulder hints at a past cost. The altered gait suggests a history of injury that demanded caution. But caution alone does not explain repeated avoidance of what the body clearly needs. Something else is shaping these choices, something that overrides thirst, hunger, and the pressure of the land itself. This is where the story begins to narrow, because the question is no longer about whether the tiger can survive in this environment. It has already proven that it can. The question is why it seems unwilling to trust the instincts that once kept it alive. What happens when experience begins to outweigh impulse? When memory becomes stronger than need? At the center of this journey is a single uncertainty. What happens when survival is no longer guided by instinct, but by the fear of repeating a mistake? This is not a story about weakness. The tiger's body remains capable of killing prey larger than itself. It still commands space when it moves through the forest. Other animals react to its presence instantly, shifting routes and abandoning ground without challenge. Power has not left this animal, but certainty has, and certainty in a place like this is as critical as strength. As the dry season stretches on, every choice carries weight that cannot be undone. Paths close behind each step. Resources vanish without warning. The land does not adapt to hesitation, it punishes it slowly. By following this tiger through a sequence of decisions that defy expectation, the story does not promise answers. It promises consequences, some immediate, others delayed until the moment retreat is no longer possible. By the end, the question may remain unresolved, but the cost of asking it will be impossible to ignore. The first time the tiger learned that instinct could be wrong, it did not understand the lesson as danger. It understood it as pain. Months earlier, long before the riverbeds turned brittle and the nights grew sharp, the tiger had followed a pattern that had never failed it before. A familiar route through a narrow corridor of trees. A shallow bend in the land where prey often slowed. The timing was right. The wind was steady. Everything aligned the way it always had. The tiger moved fast. The attack was decisive, but the ground was not what memory expected. Beneath a thin layer of soil lay exposed rock, slick with dust and old moisture. When the tiger lunged, its weight shifted unevenly. The forelimbs absorbed the impact. The shoulder took the rest. There was no dramatic struggle, no extended fight. The prey escaped almost immediately, scattering into terrain the tiger could not follow. What remained was the sharp, immediate signal that something inside the body had gone wrong. The tiger withdrew not because it chose to, but because movement became costly in a way it had never been before. The injury healed without rest. This landscape does not allow recovery in isolation. Hunger and thirst continue regardless of damage. The tiger adapted by adjusting how it moved: shorter strides, longer pauses, careful placement of weight. The scar faded. The pain dulled. But the memory of that moment did not dissolve with the wound. It became a reference point. After that, the tiger began to hesitate at places where it once surged forward, not always, not predictably. Only when the ground felt uncertain, when the scent carried too much of the past with it. These hesitations were small enough to go unnoticed at first. A pause before a chase, a longer assessment of footing, a shift in angle that favored caution over speed. The second fracture in the tiger's confidence came later. During a previous dry season, the tiger had pushed deeper into its range than usual, drawn by a water source it had used reliably for years. The journey was long, but memory insisted the reward would justify the effort. When the tiger arrived, the pool was gone. Not diminished, not hidden, gone. The earth where water should have been was cracked and empty, the shade insufficient to protect even a trace of dampness. The tiger searched beyond the pool, widening the circle, convinced the water must have shifted rather than disappeared. Each step drained more energy. Each turn confirmed absence. By the time the tiger retreated, the cost had already been paid. Dehydration did not stop it that day, or the next. But it left a mark that would surface later, quietly shaping behavior. The tiger survived, but the experience undermined something more fragile than the body: trust. From that point on, memory became double-edged. Roots that once guaranteed relief now carried risk. Familiarity no longer meant safety. The tiger began to cross-check instinct against recollection, weighing present signals against past outcomes that had ended poorly. This recalibration did not happen all at once. It emerged gradually, reinforced by smaller moments that echoed the same pattern. A successful hunt that ended in exhaustion rather than recovery. A shaded rest site that no longer cooled the body as it once had. A water source that returned later than expected. Each instance added weight to a growing internal ledger. Not fear exactly, but caution rooted in experience. The third and most decisive influence came from loss. At some point, the tiger's territory overlapped with another individual, an older, larger animal that held ground near the most reliable water during the peak of scarcity. The confrontation that followed was brief and inconclusive. There was no clear winner, but the message was unmistakable. This area was no longer safe to contest without severe risk. The tiger withdrew. That retreat preserved its life, but it also severed access to routes that had once balanced distance, prey, and water. What replaced them were longer paths through less forgiving ground. Survival remained possible, but only if choices became more conservative. Taken alone, none of these events would explain the tiger's current behavior. Injuries heal, water returns, rivals move on. But together they formed a pattern that rewrote priorities. The tiger learned that acting on instinct did not always produce survival. Sometimes it produced injury, sometimes exhaustion, sometimes displacement. Over time, the cost of being wrong began to outweigh the cost of waiting. This is where the anomaly takes shape. The tiger does not lack aggression or ability. It lacks certainty that the environment will respond the way it once did. Every opportunity is filtered through memory of loss, loss of strength, loss of ground, loss of reliability. The body urges action. Experience urges restraint. When the tiger stood at the edge of the riverbed and turned away from water, it was not rejecting survival. It was avoiding repetition. In a landscape that changes without warning, repetition can be fatal. The past has taught this tiger that what looks safe may no longer be. That what worked once may not work again, and that the price of finding out too late can linger long after the moment itself has passed. This is not hesitation born of weakness. It is hesitation born of memory, and memory in this place may be the most dangerous guide of all. The tiger moves through this landscape as if through a set of rules that never announce themselves aloud. Nothing here explains danger directly. There are no markers that say where safety ends or risk begins. The land offers signals only to those that have learned how to read absence as carefully as presence. From the tiger's perspective, the terrain is defined by exposure. Trees are scattered rather than continuous, creating gaps where the sun presses down without resistance. Shade exists, but it shifts constantly, breaking apart the longer the day stretches on. Every movement across open ground becomes a calculation how far to the next shadow, how long the body can remain under direct heat before loss becomes irreversible. Wind carries information unevenly. In dense forests, scent lingers layered and readable. Here it fractures. Gusts arrive suddenly, lifting dust and stripping meaning from the air. A smell that should guide the tiger forward vanishes mid-step. Another arrives too late, detached from its source. The tiger compensates by slowing, sampling the air repeatedly, assembling fragments into something usable. The ground itself is unreliable. Hard-packed soil gives way to loose sand without warning. Old river channels cut across the land like misleading pathways, promising direction but not destination. Following them once led to water. Following them now often leads to nothing at all. The tiger has learned that certainty based on shape alone is dangerous. Time governs survival more strictly than space. The difference between early morning and late afternoon determines whether movement is possible or punishing. During the hottest hours, the tiger becomes conservative, retreating into stillness, not as rest, but as defense. Energy conserved is water preserved. Every unnecessary step during peak heat carries a cost that cannot be reclaimed. Night offers relief, but it introduces its own risks. Visibility drops, and the familiar becomes distorted. Distances feel longer in darkness. Landmarks that once guided movement disappear into shadow. The tiger relies on memory to navigate, but memory does not account for subtle shifts, new obstacles, altered ground changes introduced by erosion or collapse. This environment also reshapes the behavior of others. Prey animals compress their activity into narrow windows, moving quickly between remaining resources and then disappearing into concealment. When they gather near water, alertness increases. There is no complacency here. A single disturbance sends ripples through the group, dissolving opportunity before it fully forms. For the tiger, this means that waiting can be as costly as acting. Delay reduces chances, but action increases expenditure. The balance is delicate, and the margin for miscalculation narrows as the season progresses. In this place, survival does not reward boldness. It rewards timing so precise that it borders on restraint. The greatest threat in this landscape does not move. It does not hunt or pursue. It simply persists. Scarcity exerts pressure without confrontation. Water disappears without noise. Shade retreats silently. Prey adjusts routes without warning. There is no single moment when conditions become lethal. Instead, danger accumulates through repetition each day, slightly harsher than the last, each decision weighed against diminishing returns. The tiger senses this pressure even when nothing visible changes. Its body responds before the mind does. Muscles fatigue faster. Recovery slows. Thirst sharpens attention, then dulls it. These physiological signals feed back into decision-making, reinforcing caution even when caution no longer serves. There is also an unspoken rule about territory. In environments rich with resources, boundaries are defended aggressively. Here, defense becomes selective. Confrontation risks injury, and injury in a water-poor landscape is a sentence rather than a setback. The tiger avoids encounters not because it lacks dominance, but because dominance has become expensive. Signs of others appear and vanish quickly. Tracks half erased by wind scent marks, weakened by heat. The tiger reads these as warnings rather than invitations. Each indication of proximity adds another layer to the calculus. Advancing might secure access to something vital. It might also invite conflict that the body cannot afford. This is how the environment enforces its law, by offering no clear guidance and punishing assumptions. Instinct urges the tiger toward immediate needs: water, prey, relief. Memory warns that these needs have led to loss before. The land does not resolve this conflict. It allows it to persist, forcing the tiger to choose without certainty. And here, the most unforgiving rule becomes clear. In this place, hesitation does not kill quickly. It kills slowly by allowing small deficits to compound until recovery is no longer possible. But reckless action is no safer. It accelerates depletion, exhausting reserves that cannot be replenished. The tiger exists between these extremes, constrained by rules that contradict one another. Move too little and scarcity tightens its grip. Move too much and the body pays a price it cannot survive. The environment does not adapt to the tiger. The tiger must adapt to an environment that changes without explanation. This is the context in which every decision now unfolds. Not as a battle of strength, but as a negotiation with limits that shift daily. The land does not care whether the tiger understands these rules. It enforces them regardless. And there is one truth embedded deeper than all others. Here, a single mistake does not end survival immediately. It ends the possibility of correction. Once that threshold is crossed, the environment offers no second chance. The opportunity appears without warning. The way the best chances often do in this environment, quietly, almost carelessly, as if the land itself has momentarily forgotten its own rules. The tiger detects it through movement first. A shift in the tall, dry grass ahead. Too slow to be wind. Too deliberate to be coincidence. The body reacts before thought has time to interfere. Muscles tighten, head lowers, weight settles into a position that has ended countless lives before. Distance is favorable. Cover, though thin, is enough. The angle of approach offers a clean line, one that avoids loose ground and minimizes exposure. It is by every measure that matters a manageable hunt. The prey is alone, separated from others by necessity rather than mistake. Its attention is divided, scanning for threats that have not yet announced themselves. The tiger advances a few steps, silent, precise. Heat presses against its sides, but the cost is acceptable. This is the kind of moment predators are built for: short, decisive, efficient. Then something changes, not in the environment, not in the prey, in the tiger. The forward motion slows. Not enough to be obvious, but enough to interrupt the rhythm. The tiger pauses, head lifting slightly, eyes narrowing as if reassessing a calculation that should already be complete. The prey remains unaware. The window is still open. Seconds pass. The tiger takes another step, then stops again. This hesitation does not resemble fear. There is no sudden retreat, no flattening of the body in alarm. Instead, there is restraint and internal resistance that halts momentum without explanation. The muscles remain primed, coiled tightly, but the release never comes. The prey shifts position, moving closer to open ground. The angle worsens. The tiger adjusts, circling slightly to compensate. This movement costs energy, but it restores advantage. The body is ready. The opportunity remains intact. And yet the tiger does not commit. Instead of lowering further, instead of accelerating into the final approach, it eases backward, redistributing weight onto its hind legs. The posture changes subtly, transforming from attack to observation. The prey moves again, closer now to terrain where pursuit would be longer, more expensive. The moment is slipping. Still the tiger waits. When the prey finally lifts its head and senses something wrong, the reaction is immediate. It bolts, breaking into a run that carries it beyond the tiger's optimal range. The tiger does not chase. It remains still, watching the retreating shape disappear into the dry expanse. The opportunity is gone. The silence that follows is heavier than failure. No dust clouds, no frantic movement, just the tiger standing alone in the grass, breathing slowly, as if absorbing the absence rather than reacting to it. This is the anomaly. Not that the tiger failed to catch prey. Failure is common expected survivable. The anomaly is that it chose not to try when success was plausible. That it interrupted its own sequence without external pressure. That it abandoned a moment its instincts had already approved. This behavior repeats. Days later, the tiger approaches another situation that should resolve the growing strain. A water source reduced but present lies within reach. The ground is stable. No recent signs of rivals appear nearby. The air carries the faint, unmistakable scent of moisture. Enough to drink, enough to recover. Again, the tiger stops short. It lowers its head, reads the ground, inhales deeply. And then, just as before, it withdraws, not in haste, not in panic, in control. 2 events, 2 refusals. At this point, there are only questions. One possibility is that the tiger's past injuries have recalibrated its tolerance for risk. Pain has a way of teaching lessons that override instinct, especially when survival depends on avoiding repetition. Perhaps the tiger associates certain conditions, open ground, unstable footing, exposed water with outcomes that once nearly ended its life. If so, this restraint is adaptive. Caution becomes a shield preventing the body from committing to actions that memory labels as dangerous, even when present circumstances appear favorable. But there is another possibility. Memory itself may be misleading. The tiger's internal map is built on patterns that no longer align with the environment. Routes that once offered security now end in depletion. Water sources remembered as reliable have failed before. In this context, avoidance may not be caution. It may be mistrust. A refusal to believe that relief is real, even when it is visible. If that is true, then the tiger is not avoiding danger. It is avoiding disappointment. Both explanations carry consequences. If caution dominates, the tiger conserves energy, but sacrifices opportunity. Hunger deepens gradually. Thirst sharpens. Each missed chance narrows the range of acceptable choices. Survival becomes a series of near misses that accumulate cost without immediate crisis. If mistrust dominates, the tiger rejects the present in favor of the past. It allows old outcomes to dictate current behavior, even when conditions have shifted. In a landscape that changes unpredictably, this rigidity can be as dangerous as recklessness. There is no clear way to distinguish between these paths from the outside. The tiger does not signal regret or relief. It does not linger at the sight of the missed opportunity. It moves on, slipping back into familiar routes, guided by memory rather than chance. But the absence of action leaves a mark, one that cannot be undone by later success. The body carries the consequences quietly. Energy expenditure continues without replenishment. Recovery periods lengthen. The margin between functional and critical narrows step by step. The anomaly is no longer an isolated incident. It is becoming a pattern, and patterns once established shape everything that follows. This is the point where the story crosses an invisible threshold. What began as an isolated choice now carries forward, influencing every decision that comes after it. The tiger is no longer responding solely to the environment. It is responding to itself, to the memory of loss, to the anticipation of failure, to an internal calculus that values avoidance over acquisition. Whether this strategy preserves life or accelerates decline remains unresolved. But one truth is already clear. In a landscape governed by scarcity, refusing what is available can be as dangerous as chasing what is not. And the tiger has now done it more than once. The consequences do not arrive as punishment. They arrive as subtraction. Nothing dramatic changes the morning after the missed hunt. The forest desert edge looks the same. The wind moves the same dry grasses. Heat settles into the ground with familiar weight. But something is already different. The tiger wakes slower, its movements measured in a way that has nothing to do with caution and everything to do with recovery that never fully happened. Hunger sharpens perception at first. The tiger becomes more attentive to sound, more sensitive to vibration in the ground. Every rustle carries potential. But heightened awareness comes at a cost. The body burns energy to maintain it, and without intake, the balance tilts quickly. By midday, the tiger abandons patrol routes it once covered easily. Distances that were manageable weeks earlier now feel longer, not because the terrain has changed, but because the reserves that supported those distances are thinning. Rest periods stretch. The tiger chooses shade earlier, remaining still for longer intervals, waiting for heat to pass rather than pushing through it. This conservatism preserves water, but it also limits opportunity. Prey movement does not pause to accommodate restraint. Herbivores adjust their own schedules, crossing open ground during narrow windows when predators are least active. By the time the tiger resumes movement, the land is quieter. Tracks are older. Scent is weaker. What remains requires more effort to interpret. The second cost emerges through space. Territory is not a fixed possession in environments like this. It is maintained through presence movement, scent marking repeated use. As the tiger reduces, its range gaps appear. Other animals notice first. Prey begin to use corridors once avoided. Smaller predators test boundaries, passing through areas that carried risk before. Eventually, another tiger's scent appears at the edge of the range. Faint, intermittent, but unmistakable. The tiger does not confront it. Confrontation would demand speed endurance and the willingness to absorb injury. In a water-poor landscape, injury is not a setback. It is an expiration date. The tiger chooses distance instead, adjusting routes to avoid overlap. This decision prevents immediate conflict, but it also surrenders ground. Territory shrinks again. With less space comes compression. Paths repeat more frequently. Rest sites see more use. These repetitions increase predictability, making the tiger easier to anticipate. Prey become more cautious within the remaining range. Hunting opportunities decline further, not because prey have vanished, but because they have learned. The third cost is internal. Avoidance becomes habitual. The tiger begins to abort approaches earlier in the sequence, stepping back before the body fully commits. These micro-withdrawals conserve energy in the moment, but they erode confidence over time. Each aborted attempt reinforces the pattern. Restraint feels safer than action. This is not conscious learning. It is conditioning. Physiological signals shift as dehydration deepens. Muscles lose elasticity. Reaction time dulls. The tiger compensates by slowing further, relying more heavily on anticipation than speed. This adaptation works only when the environment remains stable. Here, it does not. A day arrives when the tiger miscalculates distance. It approaches a resting site it has used repeatedly, expecting shade to last through the afternoon. But erosion has altered the slope. The sun reaches the ground earlier than expected. Heat builds before the tiger has recovered enough to move again. The result is not immediate danger, it is extended exposure. By the time the tiger relocates, it has lost more water than planned. The body responds with lethargy rather than alarm. Thirst becomes background noise, present but no longer urgent enough to trigger decisive action. This dulling is dangerous. It masks severity. Later that night, the tiger encounters a route it has avoided since the missed water source. The ground looks unchanged. The air is cooler. Logic suggests the risk may have been temporary. But memory intrudes, recalling loss rather than current conditions. The tiger turns away again. Each refusal tightens the constraints. Hunger deepens. The body begins to draw on reserves meant for emergencies, not daily function. Weight loss is subtle but cumulative. Bones remain hidden beneath muscle, but the fullness that once buffered exertion is fading. The environment responds without malice. As the tiger's presence weakens, the system reallocates. Prey movement stabilizes along new paths. Other predators gain access to resources once monopolized. The balance shifts quietly without acknowledging the reason. There is no single moment when the tiger becomes unsustainable. Instead, sustainability dissolves through repetition. Every choice made to avoid risk carries a delayed cost. Every delay narrows future options. The tiger is still capable of violence, still feared in close quarters, but the number of quarters where it can afford to be present is shrinking. The most damaging consequence is timing. Opportunities still exist, but they require decisiveness that the tiger no longer trusts itself to deliver. When prey appears at the edge of viability, the tiger hesitates just long enough for the moment to degrade. When water is detected, doubt intervenes before commitment. These fractions of time accumulate. By the time the tiger recognizes the depth of its deficit, reversal is no longer simple. The body cannot tolerate the expenditure required to reclaim lost ground. The mind resists the risks necessary to reset the pattern. What remains are incremental adjustments that preserve the present at the expense of the future. This is the price of the anomaly, not immediate failure, but prolonged erosion. Survival continues, but its trajectory bends downward. The tiger moves less, eats less, and trusts less. Each day passes without collapse, reinforcing the illusion that the strategy is working. But survival is not measured by the absence of death. It is measured by the ability to recover. And recovery in this landscape requires accepting risk at the right moment. The tiger has begun to miss those moments. By the time it senses that the margin is gone, the margin has already been gone for days. The land offers no signal to mark this threshold. It simply continues indifferent, enforcing its quiet arithmetic. Loss added to lost choice, added to consequence, until the equation no longer balances. And somewhere between restraint and necessity, the tiger has crossed into a phase where every decision must now pay for all the ones that came before it. The shift does not announce itself with violence. It arrives as a detail out of place. The tiger encounters it just after dawn, when the ground still holds the last coolness of night, and the air carries scent more clearly than it will later in the day. The route is familiar, one of the few remaining paths the tiger still uses with confidence. The soil here is usually undisturbed, pressed flat by time and wind, rather than movement. Today it is marked. Tracks cross the path at an angle, cutting through the tiger's line of travel with casual certainty. They are not old. Edges remain crisp. Sand has not yet collapsed inward. The weight that pressed them into the ground was significant, deliberate, unhurried. Another tiger. The discovery alters posture immediately. The tiger slows head-lifting body, angling slightly away from the path. Muscles tighten not for attack, but for assessment. The scent arrives seconds later, carried low by the morning air. It is unmistakable. Close, recent, confident. This is not a transient visitor. The tracks do not skirt the route, they claim it. The tiger follows the signs cautiously, not to pursue, but to understand. The pattern becomes clear within a few hundred meters. This other animal has moved through the area repeatedly, not passing through, but using it. Resting sites bear compressed grass. Scent marks appear at junctions the tiger once controlled. The overlap is no longer theoretical. Something has changed while the tiger has been conserving itself. The shock does not come from the presence of a rival alone. Competition has always existed. What unsettles the tiger is where the rival has established itself near routes that lead toward remaining water, along corridors that once balanced risk and reward. The implication is immediate and difficult to ignore. While the tiger hesitated, something else advanced. The land has not been empty during restraint. It has been reorganizing. As the tiger withdraws from the marked path, it encounters another anomaly. The ground ahead bears a different sign, straight lines pressed into soil where none should exist. Not paw prints, not hooves. Something heavier, smoother, repeating with mechanical consistency. Human passage. The tiger stops completely. This scent is faint but layered, older than the rival's tracks, yet renewed often enough to remain present. The path has been used recently. The edges are disturbed in ways the wind does not produce. Stones are displaced in a pattern that suggests intent rather than chance. This territory is no longer defined solely by natural pressure. The realization reframes everything that came before it. The tiger's avoidance of certain routes, its reluctance to commit to water sources, its repeated withdrawal from opportunities. All of it now exists within a larger context. These were not just places associated with past loss. They are areas that have been changing faster than memory could track. What the tiger interpreted as instinct warning may have been outdated information. What felt like caution may have been misalignment. The environment has been shifting beneath restraint. Water sources have not simply disappeared. They have been claimed diverted or rendered unsafe by activity. The tiger does not fully understand, but can sense well enough to avoid. Prey behavior has not changed randomly. It has reorganized around new pressures. The rival tiger's presence confirms this. It has adapted more aggressively, moving into contested zones, accepting risk the first tiger avoided. Whether through better timing or different experience, it has claimed ground that now blocks access. This is the midpoint revelation. The tiger's strategy has not preserved opportunity. It has allowed others, animal and human, to reshape the map. The realization produces a change in behavior that is subtle, but unmistakable. The tiger begins to reassess previously rejected routes. It circles closer to areas it once avoided, testing the air repeatedly, sampling scent with renewed intensity. The body remains cautious, but the hesitation shifts from refusal to calculation. This recalibration is dangerous. The tiger is now operating with diminished reserves. Weight loss has reduced tolerance for prolonged exertion. Dehydration has dulled margins for error. Revisiting risky zones now carries a higher cost than it would have earlier. But avoidance has reached its limit. The land has become narrower. Safe options have collapsed into a smaller set of possibilities, many of which now intersect with rivals or human activity. The tiger can no longer preserve itself by shrinking inward. The inward space has already been claimed. This is where the story turns, not toward triumph, but toward inevitability. The tiger stands at the intersection of its own choices and forces beyond its control. Memory is no longer sufficient. Instinct alone is no longer trustworthy. The environment has changed too much, too quietly, for either to dominate. There is no clear path forward that does not involve risk. The midpoint shock is not a single discovery. It is the realization that the rules have changed, while the tiger was still playing by the old ones. That survival now requires not restraint, but re-engagement with all the cost that entails. The tiger turns away from the marked path slowly, head low, moving with renewed urgency rather than caution. The day is warming. Time is tightening. What happens next will not be defined by whether the tiger chooses to act. It will be defined by whether action still matters. Because from this point forward, inaction is no longer neutral. It is surrender by delay. Night arrives without relief. The heat loosens its grip slightly, but the land does not cool the way it once did. The ground releases stored warmth in slow waves, and the air remains heavy, carrying scent without clarity. Darkness settles unevenly across the dry forest desert edge, filling hollows while leaving exposed ground, faintly visible under a thin, indifferent moon. The tiger moves. This is not the purposeful travel of confidence. It is movement shaped by calculation, short advances followed by long pauses, each step measured against what the body can still afford. The muscles respond more slowly now, not weak but depleted. Each contraction draws from reserves that no longer replenish overnight. The tiger chooses the night because it must. Daylight demands water the body cannot spare. Night offers reduced loss, but it also removes certainty. Shapes blur. Distances distort. Familiar landmarks lose definition, forcing the tiger to rely on memory that has already proven unreliable. The first hours pass in silence. No prey crosses the immediate path. The tiger listens for sound rather than seeking movement, allowing the environment to reveal itself. Small noises register sharply, rodents shifting beneath dry leaves. Insects breaking the stillness, but none are worth pursuit. The tiger remains focused on larger patterns, conserving energy for moments that justify the cost. Time stretches. The body responds to hunger by narrowing attention. Peripheral awareness fades. The tiger's world compresses to what lies directly ahead. This tunnel of focus is dangerous. It limits options, reducing adaptability. But widening attention would require energy the tiger no longer has. A decision must be made. The tiger approaches a route it has not used since the early stages of decline, a narrow corridor leading toward an area where water once persisted longest. The path is risky. It cuts through exposed ground and intersects with signs of both the rival tiger and human activity. But the alternative is stasis, and stasis now guarantees loss. The tiger advances. The ground feels different beneath its paws, harder, less forgiving. The soil carries the faint residue of repeated passage flattened in places where no animal trail should exist. The scent confirms it. Humans have been here recently. Not close enough to be present now, but close enough to have altered the landscape in ways the tiger cannot fully predict. The tiger slows further, every sense engaged. This is where the long night earns its name, not through darkness alone, but through duration. Each decision takes time. Each pause stretches longer than the one before it. Progress is incremental, measured in meters rather than kilometers. At some point, thirst overtakes hunger. The mouth feels dry. Swallowing produces no relief. The tiger breathes through its nose deliberately, minimizing moisture loss. It lowers its head occasionally, not to drink, but to feel cooler air closer to the ground. These are not solutions. They are delays. The tiger reaches a depression where water once pooled after seasonal rains. Memory insists it should be here. The ground suggests otherwise. The surface is cracked and pale, holding no reflection, no scent of dampness. The tiger circles the depression, slowly expanding outward, searching for signs that memory might still be correct. It is not. The realization does not trigger panic. It triggers recalculation. The tiger has anticipated this possibility. What it has not anticipated is how little capacity remains to respond. The night deepens. Fatigue alters judgment. Reaction time dulls. The tiger missteps, once sliding slightly on loose soil. The correction costs more than expected. The body recovers, but the effort leaves a tremor in the limbs that lingers longer than it should. This is the most dangerous phase, not crisis, but erosion. The tiger continues moving, drawn now by necessity rather than strategy. Roots blur together. The mental map collapses into fragments. This tree cluster that rise in the ground, the memory of shade that no longer exists. Orientation depends on habit rather than clarity. Somewhere ahead, the scent of prey appears briefly. Weak, distant. The tiger pauses, assessing whether pursuit is possible. The calculation is simple and unforgiving. Distance exceeds capacity. The tiger lets the scent fade without action. Another loss. Later, a sound breaks the monotony. A low movement through brush, heavier than rodents, deliberate enough to suggest opportunity. The tiger shifts position, lowering its body instinctively. For a moment, instinct threatens to reclaim control, but the body resists. The muscles do not surge. They tighten, then hold. The tiger waits, listening for confirmation that justifies the expenditure. The sound does not repeat. The moment dissolves into uncertainty. The tiger remains still, until stillness costs less than movement. Hours pass. The night stretches beyond its usual boundary, not in time, but in impact. Every choice compounds. Every delay reinforces the narrowing of options. The tiger is no longer deciding how to survive long-term. It is deciding how to make it through the next hour without triggering collapse. At the lowest point of the night, the tiger rests in a shallow hollow between rocks that offer minimal shelter. The ground here is cooler. The air moves slightly. It is enough to prevent overheating, not enough to recover. The tiger lies with its head raised, eyes open, scanning darkness without expectation of change. Sleep does not come easily. True rest would lower vigilance, and vigilance is the only thing separating the tiger from irreversible mistake. In this state, the line between caution and paralysis blurs. The tiger has adapted to scarcity by delaying action. Now delay threatens to become permanent. The body signals need more urgently, but the mind filters those signals through layers of memory and restraint. The result is hesitation without alternative. This is the essence of the long night, not a single ordeal, but a sustained narrowing of possibility. The tiger is still alive, still capable of movement, still dominant in form. But the system that supports dominance has collapsed inward, leaving no room to maneuver. When the sky begins to lighten imperceptibly, the tiger rises again. Movement is slower now. The limbs feel heavier. The head lowers closer to the ground, conserving energy. Dawn is approaching. The night has not resolved anything. It has not delivered relief opportunity or clarity. It has only forced the tiger to confront the limit of endurance built on restraint alone. As the first faint light seeps into the horizon, one truth stands out more clearly than any scent or sound. Whatever decision comes next cannot be postponed. The tiger has survived the long night, but survival here has only delayed the reckoning. And the day that follows will demand a choice that the night refused to make. Dawn arrives thin and colorless, as if the sky itself is conserving energy. The tiger moves with it, not because morning offers advantage, but because remaining still has become more dangerous than motion. The body is slower now, not failing, just honest about its limits. Each step sends a muted signal upward through joints and muscle, a reminder that reserves once taken for granted are no longer available. Ahead lies the last meaningful option. The terrain opens into a shallow basin, where the land dips and narrows before rising again. Beyond that rise, the tiger's memory places a water source, one that has not been checked since avoidance became routine. Reaching it requires crossing exposed ground and passing through a corridor where signs of the rival tiger were strongest days earlier. There is also the faint residue of human presence, older but persistent. Every path forward is compromised. Turning back offers nothing. The routes behind have already failed. Remaining still invites dehydration that will not announce itself until collapse. The tiger stands at the edge of the basin, head low, eyes scanning the far slope, assembling information that no longer aligns neatly. The wind shifts. For a brief moment, the air carries something unmistakable: water. Not memory, not imagination. Actual moisture, faint but present, pulled from the far side of the rise. The scent is weak, diluted by distance, but it exists. This is the moment restraint has been postponing. The tiger's body responds despite hesitation. Muscles tighten. Weight shifts forward. The heart rate increases not from exertion, but from commitment. Whatever waits beyond the rise will demand energy the tiger may not be able to replace. But not moving now guarantees loss. The tiger enters the basin. The ground here is unstable, a mix of compacted soil and loose sand shaped by occasional runoff. Each step must be placed deliberately to avoid slippage that would waste strength. The sun lifts higher, accelerating heat accumulation. There is no shade in the basin, only distance. Halfway across, the tiger detects another scent layered into the air. The rival. It is close enough now that avoidance is no longer guaranteed. The tiger slows, recalculating. Confrontation would require asserting dominance, a display of strength that depends on explosive energy and sustained pressure. The body can still deliver the first. It cannot guarantee the second. The tiger angles slightly, attempting to skirt the edge of the rival's influence without abandoning the route entirely. This adjustment lengthens the path, adding distance the body must absorb. The trade-off is risk without certainty. At the base of the rise, the tiger pauses again. This is the final decision point. Climbing the slope commits the tiger fully. The ascent will expose it, drawing attention from any observer above. If water exists, it lies beyond. If it does not retreat, will cost more than advance ever could. The tiger climbs. Each step upward demands more than the last. Muscles burn. Breathing deepens, pulling dry air that offers no relief. The body protests, signaling depletion, but the signals arrive too late to reverse direction. At the crest, the land opens. Below, in a shallow depression, shielded partially by rock and brush, lies water. Reduced, stagnant, but real. The tiger does not rush. It scans the perimeter first, searching for movement-scent shadow. Nothing immediate answers. The rival's presence lingers at the edge of perception, not close enough to challenge, not far enough to ignore. The humans are absent for now. The tiger descends cautiously and reaches the water. The first contact is brief, a touch of the tongue, a pause, then another. The water tastes wrong, mineral-heavy, warm. But it is water. The body responds instantly, relief rippling through systems pushed too far for too long. The tiger drinks. For a few moments, survival feels simple again. Then the ground shifts behind it, a sound not loud but deliberate. The tiger lifts its head, water dripping from its jaw, eyes locking onto the shape emerging from cover. The rival stands, partially revealed posture, confident, unhurried. This place has been part of its range longer than the tiger realized. The standoff is brief and decisive. The rival does not advance. It does not need to. Its position is superior. The tiger understands immediately. Remaining here invites confrontation that cannot be won without injury. Injury here would not be survivable. The tiger backs away from the water, slowly, never breaking eye contact. The retreat is controlled, but the cost is clear. The tiger drinks no more. It relinquishes the site without violence, preserving life at the expense of access. When the tiger crests the rise again, moving away from the basin, the weight of the choice settles fully. It has chosen to live without claiming what it needs. The climb back drains what little recovery the water provided. The sun climbs higher. Heat tightens its grip. The tiger moves into what shade it can find, resting briefly, but the rest is shallow. This is the outcome of the climax. Not victory, not defeat. Survival shaped by compromise. The tiger has proven that restraint alone is insufficient. It has also proven that boldness carries consequences it cannot afford. What remains is a narrowed path where each choice sacrifices something essential. The landscape does not resolve this tension, it maintains it. As the day progresses, the tiger moves away from the contested zone, carrying with it the partial relief of water and the certainty of displacement. The body will function a while longer, days perhaps. But the range has contracted again. Options have collapsed further. The climax does not end the struggle. It defines its limits. The tiger has reached the point where survival is possible only through continual surrender of territory, of opportunity, of certainty. Each decision preserves the present by diminishing the future. In this environment, there are no perfect choices, only ones that delay the end. And the tiger has just made the choice that keeps it alive today, while quietly ensuring that tomorrow will be harder than yesterday. The land does not react to the tiger's retreat. The basin settles back into stillness as if nothing has happened. Water reflects the sky without concern. Dust drifts slowly where two predators measured each other and chose restraint over conflict. The rival remains not triumphant, simply present, another shape folded into the logic of the place. The tiger moves on. Distance grows between its body and the water it briefly touched. But the effects linger. The mouth is less dry. The muscles respond with marginally more obedience. It is not recovery. It is postponement. Just enough to keep the body functional, not enough to reset the balance that has been tipping for weeks. As the tiger returns to the edges of its remaining range, the consequences of the decision become clearer. Routes once used daily are now unreachable without passing through contested zones. The territory has effectively fractured into smaller, disconnected fragments. Movement between them requires risk the tiger can no longer afford. The environment adjusts quickly. Prey resumes patterns shaped by the rival's presence. Paths stabilize where the tiger no longer passes. Smaller predators exploit openings, moving with less fear, less urgency. The absence of pressure reshapes behavior in subtle ways that ripple outward, altering the rhythm of the land. The tiger remains part of the system, but not at its center. Days pass without collapse. The tiger hunts when opportunity aligns precisely with capacity. Success is rare, but not impossible. Each meal buys time rather than stability. Each rest period preserves function rather than restores strength. This is survival at its narrowest. The body carries forward on diminishing margins, adapting to scarcity, by reducing expectation. The tiger no longer moves to dominate space. It moves to endure time. Shade replaces territory as the primary resource. Distance is avoided rather than claimed. The question that defined the beginning returns unchanged, but sharpened by consequence. Was the tiger right to hesitate? There are reasons to believe it was. Reckless commitment earlier might have ended this story abruptly, with injury collapse or violent confrontation. Memory has preserved the tiger through avoidance. Experience has prevented repetition of mistakes that once nearly ended its life. But there is another possibility. Hesitation may have arrived too early and stayed too long. By refusing opportunities when the cost was manageable, the tiger allowed the environment to reorganize without it. What felt like protection may have become surrender by delay. The truth is not clean. Survival here does not offer clarity. It offers only outcomes that make sense in hindsight. The tiger is alive for now. That fact alone could be taken as validation. But survival measured only by the absence of death ignores what has been lost along the way. Territory, certainty, choice. The tiger's future is not sealed, but it is constrained. The range available to it will continue to shrink unless conditions change. Rain may come, rivals may move on, human presence may shift, or none of these things may happen in time. The land does not promise correction. It enforces adaptation until adaptation is no longer possible. As the sun lowers again, casting long shadows across the dry forest desert edge, the tiger settles into a shallow pocket of shade. It rests with its head raised alert, even in stillness, aware that every decision from this point forward will carry weight beyond the moment itself. There is no final lesson written into this outcome, only an open question that remains unresolved, suspended between caution and necessity. In a world where the past can no longer be trusted and the present cannot be secured without risk, is survival defined by knowing when to wait? Or by knowing when waiting has already cost too much? The tiger does not answer. It continues forward one constrained day at a time, leaving the question embedded in the landscape unspoken, unanswered, and unavoidable for anything that tries to survive, where water is only a memory.